The Talbot Hotel has stood here for over 400 years. During that time, many famous characters have passed between these doors. One in particular was Prince Rupert, the nephew of Charles I. He would wait within the buildings and pass vital information onto the local royalist forces. The hotel still boasts its unique character with oak beams, four-poster beds and furniture dating back to the late 1600s. Let's take a look inside. As you can see, the Talbot has always been a very busy meeting place for the local town. And also it's an oasis for the tired and hungry traveller. But this hotel holds a few secrets. There are a few non-paying guests around who only come out during the twilight hours. Beneath me are a warren of tunnels that stretch out right across Stourbridge. We're standing at present in one of the many tunnels that spreads out from underneath the Talbot Hotel. Approximately at the moment we're underneath the town hall in Stourbridge, and this particular tunnel we're the very first people to come down here for a long time. The tunnels are reputed to go way back as far as Kimver, but obviously, as you can see behind me, they've been bricked up many years ago. These tunnels would have been used in the Civil War to hide and look after the injured and dying soldiers. Many of the staff in the Talbot have said that they've heard the sounds of wailing voices and cries for help from the tunnels. And I've got to be perfectly honest with you, in the first time in 16 years, I feel very uncomfortable. All I can pick up around me is the feeling of pain and anguish and upset. The atmosphere is totally unbelievable. One of the other reported stories of these cellars below the Talbot is that many years ago a young boy or a young man that worked for the hotel, who became very depressed and down, hung himself from this pipe just to the right of me. And again, as a psychic, I can confirm that story. The feelings I'm picking up at the moment are absolutely unbelievable. I'm feeling sad, pain, anger, and I'm genuinely getting upset. And I think we'll move on now and perhaps move somewhere else within the hotel. This is room 14, probably the most psychically active room within the hotel. There's been many sightings of a young lady, not just by the people that work here, by residents as well. The story is that she starts down to my left in an adjoining room. She floats through the room and then through this door and then disappears out through that mirror.
I'm Mary, I'm the housekeeper and I've been here 19 years. A few years ago, a chambermaid and myself were making this bed and she had an experience of seeing a young girl walk through the mirror. She said, I don't know who she was. Then a few years later, a medium that was visiting a resident started telling me about this innkeeper's daughter during the Civil War, who was betrothed to a young man who went off to war and got killed. And then she died of a broken heart. So all she does now is just go from room to room and crying in a very distressed state.
As well as the story of the innkeeper's daughter, there is also the presence here in the hotel of the innkeeper's mistress. A local 15-year-old farm girl came to work here in the kitchens, a job she carried out through the daytime. But during the night she would share the innkeeper's bed. In 1795 she gave birth to a small stillborn baby girl, whose body was entombed in the maze of tunnels that lie below us. A year later, unable to cope with the loss of her baby and the rejection of the innkeeper, she committed suicide here. And even now, 200 years later, they say they can still hear the sounds of a sobbing, crying girl echoing through the corridors.
Yonder lies the infamous gibbet wood, a strange and mysterious place where the local inhabitants prefer not to go. A place where the bird population is strangely silent. It's windswept and unusually quiet. In the old days, criminals were executed by hanging from a certain tree. Today, only the stump of the tree remains. But as the story goes, a stile was constructed from the timbers, and the remains of the stile can still be seen. A pathway leads through the wood up to where the stile used to be sited. There are many, many eyewitnesses to the strange goings-on here in Gibbet Wood. We shall now enter the wood with Paul de Arran, and he will tell us more about the strange story of the demise of Benjamin Robbins of Dunsley Hall.
I'm standing at the moment in Gibbet Woods. It's halfway between Stourbridge and Kinver, right on the edge of the Black Country. There's a lot of unknown happenings that go on in these woods. Local people won't even stand where I am at the moment. They're terrified to come in. One of the stories I find most fascinating. It all started on the 12th of December 1812, and the squire from Dunsley Hall, which is 300 to 400 yards away from me, was on his way back from the market. He came to a point just on the edge of the woods when he suddenly became aware that somebody was behind him. The next thing, there was a crack of a pistol and the squire fell to the ground. A horseless highwayman by the name of William Howe took the money from his pockets and disappeared into the night, leaving the squire for dead. But the squire was still alive. He struggled and crawled all the way back to Dunsley Hall with a wound in his back, and 9 days later he died. 2 Bow Street runners from London were brought up to catch William Howe and searched the area, took witness statements, and a few months later he was caught in London by these 2 Bow Street runners. 3 months later, at Stafford Assizes, he was found guilty of murder and hung. The first time anybody had been hung by trapdoor at Stafford Jail. And to put local people off, his body was then put into a horse and cart and brought all the way to a tree that was just to the left of me. He was put into a cage and hung from the tree for everybody to see. A few months after William Howe's body was hung from the tree, this is when the most strange, peculiar happenings started to happen. Local people said that they saw him walking up and down the path with his head wobbling around as though he'd been hung. And the stories carried on and on and on. Even up to today, we're at 1999, and the stories are still coming in of people walking along the lane or being parked in the Lovers' Corner, and the sight of a highwayman walking across the front of them. But the story doesn't stop there, because the tree that William Howe was hung from has a little bit more to tell us. The tree was actually used way back in medieval times to hang people. And in 1902, they excavated around the tree and found the body of a medieval skeleton with a sword through its rib cage. That was a medieval way of either killing a witch or a vampire. So the stories go way back to medieval times. And where I'm stood at the moment, I just ask you one time to come up here and feel what I can feel. It's the most peculiar sensation. And since that happening in 1812, there's been approximately 2 murders and 7 suicides within 100 yards of me. If you come up to Gibbet Woods, you won't find the tree where William Howe was hung from. It went a long time ago. But if you suddenly turn around and somebody stood there with a pistol similar to mine, I'd run.